Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 153 of Rush Roundtable. We're continuing our song discussions, and we're talking about Open Secrets from Hold Your Fire. This is a really interesting Rush song. There's a lot of really cool stuff in it, some stuff that isn't really in a whole lot of other Rush songs. So let's just get right into it. So starting off the song, there's a really cool intro opening section. Paul, why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Thanks, Ryder. Yeah, the way it opens up, I hear it like a suite where it's just a little bit of everything that we're going to hear musically in the song. But then the minute it launches into what's going to become the first verse, the way I hear it, and I can't unhear it, is between the music that Geddy and Al wrote for it, I hear the synth and then I hear the guitar. So it's like a conversation, which the entire song's theme is about conversations and what we can and can't talk about, which we'll get into. I don't get too far ahead, but musically, even it's outside of the underlying. You can hear the Taurus synth playing low. You know, Neil, all three are doing their thing, but in the meantime, there's a back and forth where it's synth guitar, and I'm going to hum it, and it's going to sound tragically awful, but it's that da 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 da, and it goes back and forth. That's my hook. First time I really gave the song a hard listen, I went, I hear two different things. And it turned out, even before I really knew
Call
what
and
I was talking
response.
about.
Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Yeah. Then it kind of like almost as just a little open-ended.
Yeah.
So there's no
the way it
closure, and
ends,
then it
the
moves
chord,
into the lyrics.
yeah, that chord at the end is really, really interesting.
Yes.
I also like how in the intro, it's Alex, he's not really playing a big flashy part, like with this call and response thing. It's very sparse lines and then like big chords, but they're like a little bit more subdued in the back. They almost sound like, I'm sure, I don't think he actually used an acoustic guitar on this song, but it has a very like, just a very like natural kind of vibe to it. Very cool like guitar tone that's really emblematic of the 80s Rush period.
Right. One,
that was the signature guitar, right?
Yeah,
I think that was the signature guitar.
Yeah.
You mentioned call and response. I never thought about this before, but African music is based on call and response.
Yeah.
Right. And this was a time when Neil was really studying that. So maybe some of those things, we think of the African rhythms, but also just the call and response style. Anyway, that's
that's a really great observation. So next, let's go into the verse. I got the lyrics right here, so I'll read those. It went right by me. At the time it went over my head. I was looking out the window. I should have looked at your face instead. It went right by me, just another wall. There should have been a moment where we let our barriers fall. I never meant what you're thinking. That's not what I meant at all. Now, before we start talking about this, I would like to introduce Tal. It's his first episode on. Welcome to the Rush fans family. Why don't you tell us real quick what your favorite Rush album is?
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Tal. Good to be here. Yeah. And my favorite Rush album is actually Hold Your Fire. But I think Power Windows is a very, very, very close second. And it's awesome. I might give you a different answer on a different day, but they're both very, very neck and neck.
Yeah. Oh, that Power Windows is going to get you some real favorites with Ryan.
Open Secrets Roundtable. It's one of my favorite Rush songs of all time. So awesome. I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, sweet.
Glad we're all in agreement. Glad that we're all in agreement how incredible.
We're really glad to have you here.
Hold Your Fire is.
Yes,
we're glad you're here.
Yeah. All right. So Tal, what do you think about this first verse section?
All right, so I love this first verse. This is where the lyrics come in. I noticed that actually it almost gives us a story, but the story isn't specific. For example, like in a song like Everyday Glory, there's a clear narration of what's going on and everything that's happening and the different perspectives. Here it's more open-ended. It's kind of up to the listener's interpretation. Like, it went right by me. At the time it went over my head. Well, what went right by me? Is this a personal experience of Neil's? Is it fictional? I'm not sure if he's talking about a couple, friends, family, could be an argument or something like that. It's open-ended. If I had to guess, it's probably loosely related to something that happened in Neil's life, but I have no proof of that. And then, let's see. I was looking out the window and I should have looked at your face instead. That obviously demonstrates ignorance. It shows that the people in this particular storyline are probably not on the page right now. situation. Yeah, thank you. They're not really on the same page. Maybe they're like, the song is called Open Secrets, right? Which is more an interesting title. Somebody's probably keeping something from the other, or they're both keeping things from each other. And it's kind of the whole lesson of the song that I think it's important to communicate with each other, so how the other person's feeling, especially if it's someone that you're close to in your life. And it also kind of goes with the instinct theme of the album, where maybe your instinct isn't to talk and maybe it's to stay quiet, but sometimes silence isn't always golden. Maybe sometimes it's important to talk, especially if you're going through something important in your life. So that's worth talking about. So that's those are my 2 cents.
Yeah. The theme of conversation is definitely very prevalent throughout this song, and we'll see as it progresses. There's a lot of I see things of uncertainty. There's just all sorts of stuff. Anybody else have any other thoughts on this first verse?
There's kind of this juxtaposition, right? I mean, the title already is Open Secrets, right? Go back to the call and response, back and forth theme, secrets in, plain sight or whatever. But, I should have looked at your face when I was looking out the window. Just another wall, but there should have been a moment where we let our barriers fall. Just all these back and forth juxtapositions of these opposites that seem to be thematic throughout this.
I was going to say something about that, actually. I wrote in my notes here that there seems to be a lot of dichotomies in the song, which I really enjoy. I mean, the title's kind of a dichotomy in of itself. I mean, it's interesting because secrets are kind of meant to be kept away from others, used by humans as a shield from embarrassment, humiliation, nonconformity, maybe fear of being cast out, since we crave acceptance. But the truth tends to reveal itself eventually, which is why I think it's written as presented. That's just my interpretation of the title. But it seems like, as demonstrated by its first verse, keeping secrets is sort of a double-edged sword, because we use it to hide from, other people, and because we don't want to reveal certain things about ourselves. But at the same exact time, when we don't, and it comes out in a way that we don't want it to, it leads to a barrier and breakdown of communication. Right. So I really enjoy that about this song, just the amount of dichotomy that's in it, especially in the first verse.
Yeah,
for sure.
Awesome.
Right.
All right. So moving on to the chorus. The lyrics are, well, I guess we all have these feelings we can't leave unreconciled. Some of them burned on our ceilings. Some of them learned as a child. The things that we're concealing will never let us grow. Time will do its healing. You've got to let it go. So Kira, what do you think about this chorus section? Pretty cool, interesting lyrics here.
Yes, this is a great chorus, and out of the whole song, I believe that the 2 lines, hang on, I'm scrolling up here. Time will do its healing, you've got to let it go. We see another theme, quite an interesting theme. In this song, there's talk about a lot of emotions, a menagerie of emotions. And here we have trauma and pain, as well as talking about instinct, which I find very interesting. To me, this means that, the pain of our past keeps us from evolving, right? As human beings, we have to overcome adversity to evolve. But what I like about the chorus, I kind of just realized last night while listening to the song again, is that it almost feels like the main character. We don't know who it is. Is it Neil? Is it a third person? Who is almost like they're talking to themselves. So with what Paul mentioned earlier of how it feels like the instrumental introduction is a conversation, it all feels like the chorus really mirrors that as well. So I find that really fascinating, and something I also didn't pick up on before. Thank you, Paul. Noticing that. Yeah, the music, I'm sorry if I'm going off a little bit. It's kind of subdued. It's not really super distinct or really heavy. Yeah. It's just kind of the feature. It's kind of just mirroring the lyrics. To me, it has a tone of self-reflection with maybe a little bit of sadness, because, talking about trauma, pain, instinct, restraint, fear, just such a menagerie of human emotions that make us very vulnerable. So I like that the music is kind of subdued in this song. I think it matches really well with the lyrics, and really, like, you're supposed to be sitting there and self-reflecting on these moments. So this is a fantastic chorus. Does anybody else have anything to add on?
David, you first. I have something, but I want to keep jumping in. So I know, David, you were going to say something.
Real quick. There's one thing, it's funny because we're talking about opposites, juxtapositions, dichotomies, but it starts out with, well, I guess we all have these feelings. So there is something that's actually the same about us all, and so we can't leave them reconciled. And, Neil, the person that, can't, a stranger is not a long-awaited friend. Obviously, this is somebody important to him. This is a close relationship because obviously he can't pretend a stranger is a long-awaited friend, but this person might be, but somehow in the midst of the dichotomies, there's something at some basic instinctual level to refer back to what Tal said, we're kind of the same.
Yeah. And the only thing as far as the chorus that I was going to jump in. Oh, sorry, Tal. As far as the chorus goes, is I on purpose listened to this one very, very loud so I can try and isolate each instrument and each element. With going back again to that dichotomy, that conversation that's being had or not being had, as I'll get to in a second. I don't want to get too far ahead with my part on the lyrics, but as far as the music goes, it was produced by Peter Collins, but the engineer was James Jimbo Barton, and at the same time he was doing Operation Mindcrime and Empire from Queensryche. He did Business as Usual for Men at Work. So one thing that Jimbo is really good at is making sure that there's a distinct sound with each instrument, so they do have their own voices. So I don't believe for a minute it's an accident that this song is structured musically the way it is. So verse being what it was and what we talked about, when we get in the chorus, you hear that chorus, that synth come in. If you turn it up really loud, especially the bass, the lower frequencies, the lower end, you turn up during the chorus and you're going to hear this very foreboding, solid. I don't know if it's an open E. That's not my specialty. Ryder, you might be able to tell us. But there's one solid note that slams through that entire part with, well, I guess if we all have these feelings, it's like, okay, I've heard your back and forth. Now you need to listen. It's like the song structure is what I call how, why solution. And you need to listen to this. So
that's a really, really great observation.
That's all.
The whole song's a conversation.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. All right. Verse number 2. So the lyrics go, closed for my protection, open to your scorn. Between these two directions, my heart is sometimes torn. I lie awake with my secrets spinning around my head. Something that somehow escaped me, something you shouldn't have said. I was looking out the window. I should have looked at your face instead. So, Paul, what do you think about the second verse?
This is, by this point with the lyrics, this is where I'm going. Now I'm starting to get it. The story's starting to come together. A lot of the themes we've already begun to talk about. Open secrets, we've said it's an oxymoron. It's the elephant in the room. The other person already, this is just how I hear it. The other person already knows what the secret or what the problem or what the issue, the trauma, the shame, the ego, whatever. We're not talking about it. I'll make it first person just for ease of conversation. We're avoiding the topic. It seems too painful to talk about, and the growth stops there. This has been said, and I agree 100%. You enter this state of arrested development when you can't communicate to this other person in whatever situation, because that fear kicks in of, I can't talk about it, but the other person already knows. So if you've been in any kind of circumstance where, this should be talked about or things are going to get worse. And that's what I think lyrically is being implied here is we both know what's going on. We're not talking about it. And again, going back to that line of, I was looking out the window. He knows I should have looked at your face instead. I was avoiding this. We should have addressed it. I should have addressed it, or you should have, whatever. And it wasn't talked about. So again, that's that fight or flight. This is the first song that introduces the idea of instinct on the album. I don't think that's an accident. It started out as time, and then they shifted into instinct, and that became the theme of the rest of the album. This is the first one where they use the word instinct, and this is the first song I think that really delves into that as its main theme. Leave it to everybody else to jump in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like thinking about the songs that came before it on the album, Forest 10, Time Stands Still, definitely, songs about time. Forest 10, that song's a little bit more ambiguous. Some people talk about it like love and, whatever. But yeah, this is where Hold Your Fire really like sinks its teeth in and like plants its identity down with its like core centralized themes. Anybody else have any other thoughts on the second verse? I would like to point out, I was going to mention this earlier. One thing I think is kind of cool about this song is, we've talked a lot about call and response. But I think one thing that's really interesting with how this song is like constructed musically is the interplay between the guitar and the bass tone. Now, stick with me on this. I thought about this like on a whim in my macroeconomics lecture today, but Alex's guitar tone, for the most part in this song, is typically pretty clean with a lot of reverb and just a lot of room to breathe, which Alex has done before on a lot of songs. But I think it's really interesting juxtaposed to the incredibly punchy and very present bass line coming from Geddy with his wall bass. And I think it gives a lot back to like the core, like musicality of the song, because if the bass wasn't there, it'd just sound like a lot of atmospheric whatever from Alex. Geddy kind of just takes that back, and really, I think this song is a great example of Geddy using the bass as a lead voice. People talk about it all the time with Rush, but I think that this is one of the like key examples of that. It allows Alex to kind of like float around a little bit while still giving the song a really strong driving like main melody. And it's really cool to hear that like be the bass. And we'll trust me, we'll get into the bass later. We'll get into it.
Also, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
I actually noticed something interesting about this song. I don't know if you think it was an accident. You guys maybe want to elaborate on it. I noticed Geddy rarely ever sings on beat one in this song. Like think about the second verse. Close for my protection, open to your score, and then between these two directions, my heart is sometimes torn. Yes, but then I lie awake with my secrets, spinning around my head, then something that somehow escaped me, 2, 3, something you shouldn't have said. And also in the chorus, he always starts on, well, I guess we all have these feelings.
Yeah.
Then B1. So he avoids B1.
Passive to start.
I don't know if there's a reason for that. I don't know if it like connects.
I think that's really cool. Just a lot of like interaction with the offbeats.
Maybe his instinct is to avoid B1. I'm not really sure.
It's not rational. It's instinctual, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also uncomfortable. It's not where you expect it to be. So, wow, that.
It kind of matches the internal conflict that's going on in the character of, or maybe Neil, he's the character that's in the song.
Good
almost
catch.
Like
that's
a good catch.
That's a really exciting
like
way to think about it.
I gotta go back and listen to the song now.
Same here.
Focus on it.
Do it again.
There we go. All right.
Maybe he's uncomfortable talking about it, even though he may not be the main character. Who knows?
Yeah.
Could be like act like a stutter kind of. It's taking him a while to get his point out, maybe kind of like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fight or flight, really, like I said, rescinding.
There you go.
So it fits.
Fight or flight.
I don't think it's accidental.
It's a really interesting way to think about this song. Yeah. All right. So moving forward, the chorus is repeated another time, not really a whole lot of variation. So then coming into the post-chorus, I guess, maybe verse 3, the lyrics go, I find no absolution in my rational point of view. Maybe some things are instinctive, but there's one thing you could do. You could try to understand me. I could try to understand you. You could try to understand me. I could try to understand you. So David, what do you think about this little post-chorus section?
A lot, but I'll try to. It's just timely. I was teaching my students today about the conflict between Enlightenment rationalism and the Romanticists, and the emotive aspect, instinctual aspect of life. But those first two lines, I find no absolution. What's absolution? It's, forgiveness, right? In my rational point of view. In other words, I can't rationalize this problem that we're having. As if I could just explain it to you, or you could explain it to me, and we could meet on this rational plane. Everything would just work out and we could solve these conflicts. No absolution there in rationality coming from Neil, right? And of course, this is very, you know, hemispheres, right? Both sides.
Yeah.
But he goes, well, maybe some things are instinctive. So he doesn't give an answer here. I can't find absolution in my rational point of view. Maybe, not certainly, maybe some things are instinctive, you know. So what do we do? Well, there's one thing you could do. You could try to understand me. And there's one thing I could do. I could try to understand you, because we can't figure this out rationally. Instincts aren't really helpful, you know, but let's at least try to understand each other. So quit looking out the window and look at each other's face. You know, this is where, you know, Donna, if you happen to be listening, this is a shout out to you. Donna Halper and I, we both love Jewish philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, who's built so much of his philosophy on the face, you know, of the other, because that's where, you know, the person is revealed. You can't be looking out the window. You have to look at their face instead. So again, it's not rationality. It's not instinctual. We can't just find an answer we can explain, but the best we can do is try to understand each other. So we have to look at each other in the face and understand, which, you know, obviously what the song, I think the overarching theme is, that's not easy to do, but you still have to do it.
Yeah.
Very, very, very well said.
Yeah.
Very well said.
Is
Also,
it
can we
just
talk about that
me?
music?
Sorry. No, is it just me, but does it
Yeah.
almost feel like the character's pleading in a way in
Yeah.
these lyrics? Like the lyrics, even though the tone isn't frantic, in the music, they seem kind of frantic.
Yeah. And I think the
Little bit
musical,
erratic.
and definitely in the musicality of this part too, it gets a lot more atmospheric. There's these little like sparse bits of percussion from Neil.
Yeah.
It
goes to
definitely
halftime.
feels, yeah, the halftime feel too. It definitely feels a lot more like a point of weakness, but also like a point of realization, you know, find no absolution in my rational point of
Vulnerability.
view. This is, yeah, vulnerability. And it's like twisting these like preconceived notions on their head. Maybe some things are instinctive. You know, it's a very introspective part of the song is what I feel like when thinking about, you know, I feel like Neil possibly could have had some stuff, and I have nothing to like back this up on, but you know, maybe something in his personal life influenced this lyric, but it's definitely like really potent. The more and more you think about it, it's like, oh, maybe, you know, maybe I should have thought another way about how I treated someone recently, or maybe an argument went away it probably shouldn't have gone. It's a really, I love this song, and Hold Your Fire, really, it feels like a very honest record. There's a lot, and especially in the lyrical themes, there's a lot of like really strong like interior viewing that I feel, especially when you're, you know, you're talking about the topic of instinct. That's something you can't really control about yourself. And I think that this like little section right here is a just great example of like how this album will revisit that kind of concept moving forward.
Yeah. It's almost like this, there's this pounding your fist on the table.
Yeah.
You know, I want you to hear me.
That's where you'll hear that synth come in. I was talking about it when it's most insistent until that vulnerability comes out. Like I said, I've done what I can. And I know it was said on one of the earlier deep dives. This isn't mine. It came from one of the deep dives, and I can't remember if they got it from Popoff's book or from the Song by Song that Kira's got in her hand. One of them mentions that the initial an inspiration that just started, I'm not saying the whole song's about it. One of the initial inspirations was a conversation or that has or wasn't being had between Getty and Neil as far as some form of idea. I do know that it's not autobiographical per se at all, but that was the inspiration for the start
Life
of it.
Experience for sure. Yeah. And it's like, you know, you want to be heard. Everybody wants to be heard. And also you're always misinterpreting me. You're not hearing what I'm saying.
That's exactly.
Then at that moment, you realize that that works both ways, and you need to hear the other person as well, you know? So it's, you know, everything that you want everybody else to do to hear you, but then you have to give that back. And so it's hard. It's tough. So yeah, this, what a great song about relationships and of all levels. This could apply to any kind of relationship, really.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So after this comes a very exciting point in the song. A very, very great guitar solo with some just unquantifiable bass work from Getty. It's insane. I'm gonna let Tal talk about this because if I do, we're gonna be here for another half hour. So Tal, what do you think about this section?
All right, so on the surface, you can just listen to it and say, oh, great guitar solo, great bass line. But if you think deeply about it, maybe it can thematically connect to some of the lyrics in the song. And now keep in mind that everything I'm saying here is kind of like, I could be changing my mind as I'm talking. But I noticed this is the first instance in the song where Alex really lets loose. Before that, he's really, really restrained, just letting out a couple chords, a couple notes. Maybe that's a sign of the character finally confessing or kind of pleading, like we said before. Because for the rest of the song, he was really, really restrained, almost like he's shy. But then Getty's bass line is a total counterpoint, which would imply that these are the two characters, the bass and the guitar, and they're not listening to each other. Maybe they're both trying to say different things at the same time, but they're still struggling to listen, and they're struggling to become cohesive. So I don't know. It's really up to the viewers or listeners, the listeners' imagination. But it's almost like we're approaching the end of the song now. Sorry?
I'll say, or our viewers in the conversation.
Our viewers, yeah, Rush fans.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, go ahead, Tal. Sorry.
But yeah, I was almost done. But yeah, we're approaching the end of the song now, so it almost not really make much sense if they're still not listening to each other approaching the end of the song. But it's possible, because that's a lot of times in most guitar solos out there, like maybe not from Rush, but just from like classic rock bands, a lot of times, you know, the bass is playing the root note to the guitar, just kind of helping the guitar shine, like to just get create the space for the guitarist to fill. But here it's like pretty much the only similarity about Getty's playing and Ops playing that they're in the same key. They're playing totally different stuff. But Getty also, his bass playing was strong from start to finish, and he had that very memorable bass line with the wall bass. So maybe that implies that maybe Alex's character was the listener, and Getty's character was the speaker. And Alex is finally now saying his theories and thoughts about this whole thing, his side of the spectrum. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
this is really a debate about whether or not to use more synths. The Getty Alex debate over that.
Yeah.
I could see what this whole song is about.
Maybe.
It starts to ramp down after this. So
I just diminished every great thing that's been said this entire episode by trying to be funny.
But you nail it too. So
there you go. You could be.
It was that era.
Is right. Yeah. Jeez.
Ryder.
Yeah. This is.
Ace.
Oh man. Yeah. This is just. It's like there's a lot of bass players in the world. You know, you got your Chris Squires, your Jaco Pastorius, you got a million people in the world. And I love all of them equally, but then there's always okay, well, who's your number one? I listen to this and it just immediately goes back to Geddy Lee. Like this might actually be like my favorite bass thing that he's ever done, very close to like Malignant Narcissism. And, you know, there's so many other great Geddy bass lines, but this does such a great job of like just capturing what Geddy does when he plays, especially in this 80s period where he tends to be a little bit more bouncy and sporadic, kind of a couple little like triplet things thrown in there every once in a while. But it's just listen to Open Secrets. I can't think of words anymore. Just do it. Just after this episode, just go do it. This section, it's money.
Whatever you're doing, stop. Go listen to Open Secrets.
Do it, honestly. Yeah, it's so great. I can't, like, songs like this make me, I love the Fender Jazz, but honestly, it makes me a little upset we didn't see The Wall for just a little bit longer. It by all means shouldn't have been on Counterparts, but like maybe they could have slipped one more album in there with it, maybe a couple singles. I don't know. All right, so as we start to wind down this song, let's look at there's an extra chorus at the end. Some things change a little bit. I'll just read through the lyrics for posterity's sake. Well, I guess we all have these feelings we can't leave unreconciled. Some of them burned on our ceiling, some of them learned as a child. The things that we're concealing will never let us grow. Time will do its healings. You got to let it go, let it go, let it go. And then following this, there's a bit of outro instrumentation. So Paul, why don't you start closing this up? What do you think about this last little section here?
I'll have a quick thought. I do want to defer to Kira as far as song by song goes, and then I only have one more thing even to say about it after that, because I don't want to go over long and people just yapping. As far as this outro part, I saw the song's whole structure as, and I mentioned this in a previous episode about a different song, but if you listen to the song and read the lyrics, how, why, solution. And we've all, I'm not going to rehash everything we've said. It does fit that same pattern. So if you go back and you read it or you listen to it, look at that pattern and you're going to notice that. And that's one thing I love about this type of songwriting, both musically and lyrically. And Kira, please.
No, it's okay. I do have a comment. I do have a comment to make about the song overall, but I'll make that later. What I was gonna say, I've just been reading song by song. I'm going to talk about that, but I mean, what I was gonna say was at the end, he's saying, "Let it go, let it go."
Yeah.
Very, very emphatic, very demanding.
Frozen
just let it go. He just sort of like releases himself. And then like the rest of like the song feels like it's sort of like, matching that.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's very hard for humans to let go of the past. It's very hard for us to let go of certain emotions. And this song and this album talks about vulnerable emotions. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, emphatic closing. But again, is he talking to someone else or is he talking to himself? Food for thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's definitely a very exciting outro. I think everything's really kind of like firing on all cylinders here. You got, everybody's playing to their top. You got we haven't really talked about this a whole lot, but there's a lot of like synth arpeggios that appear throughout the song. And those are definitely on full display here, showing off like, even more of what the keyboards can offer for Rush music. And this album has so much of that. And we're really going to see that a lot later. But it's so great. It's a great moment for the three of them to just like, show off what they can do. And definitely with that last big let it go right at the end, it's like, okay, we're here, we're doing this, let's go. It's so great. I really wish the song would have been played live for like the moments like this.
Picture Clockwork Angels ensemble playing part of the synth parts. That's exactly. Wow. I would have.
Yeah.
The synth era.
Mm-hmm. Especially like.
I watched it have the bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, we're gonna.
Like given like Prime Mover is a great example of when that song is played live, that like ending jam is just like, it just hits so much harder when it's live. What were you going to say, Tal?
I was going to say, I wonder how, if they played it live, how they would have extended that ending jam.
Yeah.
Would they have kept it going, or would Getty have said more let it goes? Would he have gone, did a little bass, an improvised bass solo, like leave that thing alone style? I'm not really sure, but we'll never know.
Yeah. I would have gladly taken an extra bass solo in this song, given how good the first one was. Yeah, there we go. Any other closing thoughts you guys have?
I do. I just want to say a couple things, and I'll promise I'll be done. Anyone that knows, anyone that's seen me on roundtables, I'm sorry, y'all haven't been on a while. Life has been busy. Knows that this is one of my top 3 favorite albums. And I just wanted to say, I feel like this is where this album really starts to like open up right at Open Secrets. I mean, Force 10 is pretty heavy. It's got some good themes about like human like resilience. It's pretty heavy, somewhat upbeat. I like At Time Stand Still is a real tear jerker. But I think what makes this song and Hold Your Fire as an album so incredible is the jazzy and subdued undertones. I mean, some of the music, not all of it is subdued. Some of it's on the heavy side, but I like that it's more subdued. I like the synths because this is an album about human emotions and vulnerability and reflection on those. And also has a lot of philosophy in it. It's very philosophy heavy. And, it's Neil commenting about the idiosyncrasies of human nature. It feels like a very honest, very raw, very powerful album. And I feel like he really start to see that with this song. And I think, in my opinion, this is like one of the strongest albums in terms of lyrical thematic writing. You know, the loop about human emotions, even like the title, Hold Your Fire. Fire is beautiful. It's hot, but it's also destructive. So what does Hold Your Fire mean? Hold your restraint, control. I just think this is a very raw album, and we're really going to start to see it open up at this song. And then Second Nature comes in with that piano and
there we
just
go.
grabs you. So sorry to ram. That is my final.
No, I couldn't have put it any better myself. That's an excellent way to close this episode out. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you know when not only episodes of Rush Roundtable, but our other shows like Rye Guys and Rush Deep Dive are coming out. Like the video and leave a comment down below. What do you think about Open Secrets? Do you think the bass solo is just as awesome as I do? You know, there's a lot of different stuff in this song, and I'm really interested to see what you guys have to say about it. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.